Michelle Crockett. Michelle's a program manager at NOAA. Is that, do I have that right? Thank you. And served on the President's Advisory Council around the executive order on diversity. And I think has some unique and good perspectives on this, as well as possibly some updates on where things are. So I'll turn it directly over to Michelle.
Thank you all. Thank you so much, Jack, for that introduction. Just by a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with federally employed women or youth? Excellent. So I know I'm in good company this morning. Thank you again to Jack and to Frank and to Al for inviting us to be a part of this discussion this morning. I always view it as an opportunity to come out and talk to groups about our organization and some of the things that we have been diligently working on for over 40 years since the inception of federally employed women or FEW. Just a little bit more background information about our organization. We have a pamphlet which sort of gives you a brief overview of our founding and some of our focus areas and some of our key priorities. As I indicated, we were founded back in 1968 when Executive Order 11375 added sex to other forms of discrimination within the federal government. We were concerned that government agencies would not provide the level of resources that were needed to address the concerns of women within the federal sector. So a group of women forged together and established and founded federally employed women. Of course, our goal, and we always seek to work with the Federal Women's Program within federal agencies because we view them as a partner in that they are inside the agencies. We are a professional organization operating outside of the agency. So, of course, there are things that we're able to do to complement and support the Federal Women's Program within the federal agencies. We have 4 focus areas. We have a very comprehensive legislative agenda. We focus on compliance, training, and diversity, hence our concern and our engagement and our involvement with the executive order. We are a truly grassroots organization. We have 3 tiers. We have chapters, we have regions, and we also have the national level, on which I sit on the National Board of Directors, serving as the Vice President of Compliance. Again, this is always an opportunity because for those of us who work within the EEO arena, whenever I have an opportunity to get out of my office and get away from hearing complaints, I'm always pleased to be able to do that. Some of the goals around FEW and what we focus on is we work on for the advancement of women in government. We strive to eliminate sex discrimination in the federal government, and we clearly work to establish and maintain relationships with administration, federal and independent agencies, and our coalition partners. We all know that women within the federal agencies are a protected category, and so with that in mind, we continue our efforts along that front. Moving just into the discussion around the executive order, and I know all of you have the executive order within your packet. For those of us in the EEO and diversity community, we were very excited on August the 18th with the signing of this executive order by the President. At that signing, that was the culmination of quite a number of years of work on behalf of FEW that we've been doing with relationship with OPM, EEOC, and MSPB as well. With the signage of this executive order, the 2 most important points for us was the executive order directed the director of OPM, the director of OMB, in coordination with the President's Management Council and the chair EEOC to establish a government-wide initiative to promote diversity and inclusion within the federal workforce. That executive order also directed within 90 days for these groups to develop and issue a government-wide diversity and inclusion strategic plan focusing on workforce diversity, workplace inclusion, and agency accountability and leadership. Upon issuance of the plan, agencies then would have 120 days to submit their plan to review to OPM and OMB. I'm really excited in that I met with Veronica Villanovas last week, and so we really are expecting, as someone indicated earlier, the release of this plan tomorrow, which will really delve into some of the things that we've been working on for so long. Just a little bit of information about FEW's involvement with the executive order and what we've been doing to work with the agencies. The national president for federally employed women, Sue, was asked to serve on OPM's WCAG on Diversity and Interagency Working Group. This group was tasked with preparing a strategic plan in the area of diversity for the federal sector. The group was headed up by then Deputy Director Christine Griffin of OPM. The group was then divided into subgroups which focused on the areas of accountability, recruitment and hiring, retention, and leadership development. So the group met from January 2010 all the way to April 2010. At the end of those discussions, a plan was provided to John Berry, Director of OPM, for those efforts to continue with the executive order. Our organization was also requested at that time by John Berry to survey our members so that we could sort of get a better sense of the concerns of our members. Because we are federally employed women and we have over 4,000 members nationwide, he was very concerned about what our issues of concerns were, some of the things that we were currently facing within the workplace. Upon the findings, we realized that there was quite a bit of concern about the lack of representation of women and minorities in the higher level positions. It was noted that the lower pay grades are in most cases quite diverse, but the higher pay grades within the federal sector are still represented by the majority of white males. The suggestion also centered around there were 4 major themes that we were concerned about: recruiting efforts at targeted institutions, high-level support for special emphasis programs to include the Federal Women's Program, mentoring and training for women within the federal sector so that those at the lower grades can become better equipped for promotions as they aspire to move up within the ranks within the federal sector. Additional concerns of women in the federal workforce that we're still experiencing as it relates to the discrimination, and to look at some of the data surrounding that. Women still account for only 30.6% of the SES or senior executive service, and only 40.7% of the GS grades 13 to 15, despite the fact that overall, throughout the federal sector, women comprise of over 44.2% of the federal sector. So if you really are to look at those numbers and we think about a lot of accomplishments and strides that women have made within the federal sector, we know that those challenges clearly remain. Often what we hear from many of our members who are at the mid to lower level administrative and clerical grades is the challenge of moving from those positions into career track positions. That can definitely be a challenge. I know for myself and the work that I do on behalf of NOAA's National Ocean Service, for those seeking to aspire to be within the STEM categories, science, technology, engineering, and math, that continues to be a challenge for our agencies and many other scientific agencies. And so one of the goals that we clearly want to make sure we work on is establishing relationships with minority serving institutions, HBCUs. Beyond those efforts, we've developed cooperative agreements so that we can ensure that we get our scientists in these schools to help to develop the curriculum that will help to provide a pipeline for students moving from those fields into what we do as an organization. So, that's been a lot of work on behalf of not only my organization, but those efforts clearly continue on a daily basis because it is a challenge. The other challenge for women, we feel, is that there's a work-life balance. There are many issues around employees being able to telework or being afforded some level of accommodations around work-life balance. For those of us who, have aging parents or young children, that's always a challenge. And so you have to kind of gauge that difficult balance of your career goals and being able to accomplish all the things that you'd like to accomplish in a given time. So the plan, just going back to the plan, and what we hope from FEW, what we hope that the plan will include upon its release is, of course, with the workforce diversity, it focuses on outreach and recruitment. With that, that's going to be key for us as an organization, because we want to make sure that we provide unique opportunities around recruitment of women into the federal sector, particularly students within the science and math categories as well. The plan, we hope, will also focus on inclusion, because often we hear the challenge from our members is the work that they do, how that work supports the mission goals of the organization. I'm not so sure when I speak to women that they clearly understand the role in which they play and how that supports the mission goals of their organization. So we want to help them to come up with a marketing campaign and such so that they'll be able to market themselves to their managers and their supervisors, which will help them as they work on their career goals. We also hope that this plan is going to include maximum potential to focus on leadership development for managers and supervisors within the workplace. I'm always sometimes kind of taken aback, particularly in the EEO arena, when I see things that come up across my desk and in email as well, that managers still have those core beliefs, and it's hard to believe they actually said and did some of the things they've done. So we really want to focus on leadership development and helping our managers to understand the importance of diversity within the workplace. Diversity clearly should never be thought of as a separate appendage. Often that's the challenge that I hear from managers are, I have limited resources, I have tremendous staffing issues, and so now you want to ask that I do additional work with limited staff. And I always say to them, when we talk about diversity management and inclusion, it should clearly be a part of our everyday business policies and practices. It should be clearly interwoven in everything we do within the federal sector. That's the most important thing to remember. So whenever you have a meeting, whenever there's a staff meeting or an off-site retreat, there should be a discussion around diversity efforts. What are you doing to ensure that your workforce and your workplace is diverse? What are you doing to address employee morale? Because clearly we know that there are tremendous challenges. I was having a discussion the other day with someone around the CFC campaign, and our numbers aren't what they should be. And I said, the reality is, I think in this economy that we currently have, federal workers are clearly feeling overwhelmed and challenged. And here we are now again asking them to reach into their pockets and contribute to the CFC. And please don't, get me wrong in understanding that is very important, that we donate and support those efforts. But I also feel that, I know from employees that I speak to, that feel as if this is something else that, again, you're ramming down my throat. Please don't force me to give. I'll give if I seek to do that or choose to do that. But I shouldn't be directed to give, and clearly I'm not concerned about your percentages that you're trying to reach. But that's also a diversity issue. I always look for these kinds of unique opportunities to have conversations with employees within the workplace, because it helps them to understand, that's what diversity is. Because often we hear, what is the difference between EEO and diversity? My belief is that as an EEO practitioner, I am someone who thoroughly believes that if diversity is working in the workplace, EEO simply goes away. So that in itself should be a management incentive to ensure that our diversity plans are fully implemented throughout the organization and endorsed by senior leadership. That's the most important component. It needs to be a top-down and a bottom-up. Everyone should clearly feel a part of your diversity plan. You should understand what the components are within that plan. You should really want to work and put your efforts forward towards working on adapting some of those initiatives that are outlined in the plan. It's very important that everyone feels a part of it so that they can be vitally important. So don't sit back and think that, oh, this is just another management initiative, and it's up to management to ensure that the plan is implemented. It's for everyone. Everyone should really feel a part of it and should work towards its implementation. I really did not want to do PowerPoint today because I was hoping that we could have a more intimate discussion and dialogue around this subject because it's very passionate of mine and I've been working on it for quite some time now. So I'd like to open it up for any questions you may have for me at this time.
I was interested, you had the statistic that 30.6% of SESers are women. What was the percentage that you had at the 14-15?
40.7%. GS 13 to 15. 30.6% SES. Women.
I think one of the things that you touched on in terms of the lack of diversity at some of the higher levels gets to part of what I think some of the difficulty on another area you touched on is too, and that's people in the science, technology, and math. One of the difficulties that we have in the federal government had for a number of years is the fact that we don't have dual career tracks. And that is, if you're in the technical, whatever piece of it is, if you want to get to the 15 level, you're going to step over to the management track, or sometimes at the 14 level, you're going to step over there when that's not really what you want to do, but that's the only way for you to move forward. And so what you find happening is that some people choose to stay in their hands-on, wanting to do the work kind of thing, with no opportunity to get to be an ST maybe or an SL, whereas in order to move as high as some people would like, you end up having to go to the SES in order to move that way. And I think that we create a dilemma for men and women because the choice of moving forward and having these further opportunities to go along with higher salaries or whatever for your family is based on you having to take on more responsibility as a manager or a supervisor when that's really not what you wanted to do. And so I see from my own experience and from women that I know, women are opting out and don't want to do it simply because of the cost of doing it. And men are doing it too. You know, so it's not just women. You know, when you look at the leadership challenges that SESers and people at 14s and 15s have, you know, you can be 14 and make more than an SESer. So you sit there and you go, why would I want to do that? And so you have very talented people who are opting to stay at levels below the radar simply because they can continue to do the work and still basically get a lot of the same money without other extra added stuff. So, you know, there are many things I think agencies can do, but one of the things I think that they don't want to recognize is that people are choosing not to do some of this, and it's because of family and other reasons.
The other challenge there as well, when you look at the transition, I mean, I shared the number, the percentage of women at the higher levels. And so for many programs that you have, leadership development programs, you have to be a certain grade in order to qualify for those programs. And so already there lies the challenge for a lot of women and minorities because, you know, they're not at those higher grades, so they don't qualify for those programs that will help lead them into another, you know, career or, you know, leadership position within the organization. So that remains a challenge as well.
I was going to mention, along with this young lady over here, her point is there's also a lot of moving around of
a 10-year-old. So, you know, is it important for me to be at his soccer games and to help him with his homework? Absolutely. Particularly when I typically can travel for 2 to 3 weeks a month, you know. So you just gotta, you know, and I know that, you know, maybe in some instances that's, you know, kept me from being a part of some special projects or whatever the case may be, but, you know, that's the reality.
And I don't you feel that they carry over that attitude from that portion of your life when you get further in your life and you no longer have that obstacle and you want to move up, now they're remembering, oh, well, we're strong to do this, you know, so she won't be able to go down. It's annoying. You really can't get between your arms and now, are we being encouraged to, in our present role, to take those leadership classes that are available to us through our ELMS? I'm not sure if everybody's aware of ELMS or whatever is available to us for free in order to be ready for those leadership roles when they become available.
And often we're not. And that's why, you know, you really deem mentoring very important. Because it's important to have not only a mentor, but to have a sponsor, a senior, as we move up through our careers. So it's very important because often managers won't have that conversation with employees around, you know, training programs that really should be taken.
Yeah, Michelle, you mentioned that the Combined Federal Campaign, CFC, the giving is down, and it could be possibly because of people are overwhelmed and people are feeling more challenged, and they really don't want it rammed down their throat, but they will give whenever they're ready to give. And you also said that it's a diverse issue. Can you explain that or expound on that? How it's a
I
diversity?
view it as diversity because I think it clearly impacts and affects morale within the organization. And what I hear from our employees are, we just had an all-hands meeting last Thursday, and so there was some discussion around CFC, and so there seems to be, you know, a segment of employees who really feel disenfranchised at this point. And so here we have this management representative standing there that I'm not so sure that you're being transparent in your decision making. I'm not so sure that I trust you. And so here you are again asking me to do something else, do more, give more. And it definitely impacts morale because morale is definitely down. You know, employees want to hear, I think, from managers that clearly want confirmation that your voice is being heard, our decisions are transparent. We appreciate the work that you're doing on behalf of this organization, even in these challenging times. So I just believe that it impacts morale. And so whenever something impacts and affects morale, it's clearly a diversity issue.
I was going to say that one of the diversity is not only, you know, moral, not only a good thing to do, it's a business requirement because diversity is more than just people. A lot of times what we look at is, all right, we have these numbers and this equals this and this equals that. But in my opinion, diversity also, what it brings to you is diversity of ideas. We all come with our own backgrounds, with our own experiences, and particularly in the environment that we're in now, we are in a constantly changing environment. So therefore, you need the number of different ideas, the number of different points of view that diversity brings to you. Like you said, if you're in an office and you're a committed parent and no one else there has children or has family requirements or anything like that, or they're beyond that stage, then again, maybe they don't begin to realize, oh, you leave at 4 o'clock because you have a commitment. Well, the rest of us don't have commitments, so, you know, and because you mentioned that, you know, somebody saying, well, you know, she always leaves. So it's very, very important that from a strategic standpoint, that management is able to look at the value of diversity in the other things than just stark numbers, you know, okay, we've met this, we've met that, and see the value that those diverse ideas coming in those points of view, those experiences, understanding of the various, of how, as I say, the economic situation right now, the overall environment affects different people in different ways. So that therefore, by having a diverse workforce, you're able to gain all of the things, all of the benefits from each segment. You come in early. I'm a late person. I'm going to get there at 9 o'clock. Okay, but I'm just saying, that's the type of thing that diversity brings to you, the ability to utilize all of your resources and, again, have the points of view so that you also get, when you make decisions, how they actually reflect in various areas.
You indicated that the Federal Executive Women's Organization kind of weighed in on the working group's proposal. Have you all put forth any recommendations specifically with regard to inclusive practices that you could share with us?
We have, in a sense, around really our concern is supporting the Federal Women's Program along the special emphasis standpoint, because typically those special emphasis programs are housed within your civil rights offices, and so those staff are always overwhelmed. There are many challenges, and of course, you know, priority is always going to be around compliance and making sure that that is taken care of. So when it comes to special emphasis programs, clearly they're underutilized or not utilized in the way that we would like to see them utilized. We don't want to see Women's History Month celebrated whereby you have a luncheon and everybody comes in and is filled with that. We want you to be talking about your Federal Women's Program. We want you to be looking at your workforce data, the composition of that workforce data, when you're making those decisions around announcements and your hiring. Those are the kind of conversations that we want to have. We also want you to make sure that when you have those ranking panels and those hiring authorities, they're talking to their Federal Women's Program manager. That person is engaged in that process from its inception all the way to the end. So when we talk about inclusion, we are really, forging forward and pushing to ensure that the Federal Women's Program has the resources that it needs, and that it's supported at the level that it should be supported at in the agencies.
I'm just going to chime in with a comment that I've seen at the overseas discussion. And I'm sort of diving into a little bit of viewpoint here that sometimes can be, that people can react negatively to, so I'm not saying anything to sort of put anybody on edge. But I've noticed that in my office, sometimes we want to engage in these discussions in such a politically correct way that we avoid getting to real issue. We're not talking about the white elephant in the room. And in my particular office, I have what I call the Vegas moment. Where I'm like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Say what you mean, say it exactly how you mean it. Take all the context away from it so that I know exactly what you're talking about and we can be on the same level and hearing the same things. And in my office in particular, what I find influences that discussion is the perception of men that they're excluded from this discussion, or they feel like they can't share their opinions about what's going on because it would it risks crossing a politically correct line, if you will. And yet that population is the exact one that when we talk about our percentages, oftentimes that's the majority percentage that we're trying to engage in a dialogue with. So if we're not talking about their perceptions and how they may feel about this conversation, we are limiting the extent to which we can make progress. And there are numerous reasons why diversity is important and why I think our society is improved because of it. But we likewise, I think, have to take care not to exclude folks who have an opinion and let their opinion be heard without feeling like they're being or risk being judged or sound like they're crossing a line that they're concerned about. It's almost as if I can engage in that conversation, but you can't. You just have to listen to me. And that's a challenge for all of us when we deal with this issue or try to address this issue. So I'm putting it out there for food for thought for folks, because oftentimes I feel like it's not addressed, it's not talked about, because of those concerns.
Clearly, it's important, and I hear you 100%, because I have to, enter into that kind of conversation and dialogue on a daily basis within the scientific community. Whenever they see this woman come and talking about EO and diversity, here we go. Scientists are high level and analytical thinkers, and so it's all about the data, all about the data. So I always begin my discussions around sharing with them what our workforce data looks like, just to give them, to make them a little bit more comfortable in that arena, but clearly offer up solutions and opportunities for engagement. That's very important, because when, they're the decision makers. And so it's really important to provide them with the resources, information, the education that they need, so that they can feel more comfortable in engaging in these conversations. Not pointing and saying, well, these numbers are horrible, what are you all doing? You're not doing anything. It's been this way for years. And that's not the discussion that we need to have. We're talking about full implementation. I want to hear what your concerns are. I want to hear why you're uncomfortable with not having, because everything has to have performance metric attached to it in order for us to fully address it. So, that can sometimes be a challenge around, diversity, but you can develop those performance metrics as you look at your diversity plan. I think it's going to be important that you include those things. But definitely having engagement from everyone within the organization, making sure everyone feels that their voice is being heard and that they're valued.
First of all, let me encourage you and congratulations. A lot of people don't know this, but I'm in the federal government today because of you. Men didn't mention it. Men are competitive. But I tell you what, a woman reached out and took my hand when I was in the military as a box sergeant. And she said, you need to be doing this and this and this. And I followed, taught me how to fill out my application. I did a lot of work with the Untitled Chapter in many in the 80s. I'm a lifetime member of FEW. Many need to get on board with FEW because they can teach you things that you will learn nowhere else. The second thing I want to say on diversity as a whole, I've been in the diversity field for about 25 years. Probably heard I've spoken many of your conferences, national conferences. Let me say this, that in the end, after all the policies, plans, programs, data, and everything, leaders create a climate or a context for diversity. It is the climate that a leader creates that either empowers or disempowers, encourages or discourages, enables or disables. So we can do a lot of things programmatically, but in the end, leaders lead diversity. I personally believe that diversity cannot be managed. We manage things, we lead people. So when you see an organization where people are inspired, they're connected, they're working, it's because someone in leadership said, this must happen. So I put the responsibility on leadership, and I'm dedicating the rest of my career basically focused on leadership, because they want the best from people. Keep doing what you're doing. HR, keep doing what you're doing, but in the end, we got to, have the little quiet moments with our leaders and tell them, if you want this, you have to do this. You have no choice. You have to build trust. You have to build credibility. You have to build confidence. And go ahead, Sheila. I'm just proud of you. That's all I can do.
Thank you for being on our marketing campaign, because clearly we're an organization that is open to any and everyone who is willing to join us and be a part of the things that we do on behalf of all federal employees.
I was going to say, in conjunction with what he just said, if you can, from a leadership standpoint, create an agency culture wherein it supports diversity, issue and the environment is very strong and very strongly stated, then the issue that she was mentioning should not even take place, because if you have a culture that supports diversity, then it's all inclusive, and you should be able to, in that culture, everyone should be able to speak up, as I say, to share ideas, because very often what the problem is that those ideas are not shared. That, you know, if you feel uncomfortable speaking up because you're part of what is considered a majority population, then diversity in that arena is not working, because diversity is all inclusive, not just inclusive of those groups that may have been negatively affected in the past. So again, it goes back to exactly what you stated. You have to create an environment and an agency culture wherein we understand what we're gaining from diversity, and that what we're seeking to come to is a level that everyone feels comfortable in, even if it's just asking questions. Well, maybe I don't understand. And if you can explain to me, then maybe I will understand. Maybe we won't agree, maybe we'll have differences. But that culture has to be established in the agency that you're working in.
Imagine a workplace where everyone truly felt included and valuable. I mean, that's the best business case you could ever make for diversity. Because clearly all of this in the EO world just simply goes away. You're not dealing with the cost of settlements. You're not dealing with the cost of litigation. And so that in itself, for me, has to be the best business case that we can make. It says we sell, these diversity plans and what we're doing with our agencies.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting when you said, and I actually absolutely agree with you, you say certain people who work late, may stay, to 6, 7, 8 at night, they get all the recognition, they get all the acknowledgement. And I had my last boss, who was a political appointee, a female. I mean, she would come in like at 9:30, 10 o'clock, but then she worked at 8 or 7. Whoever worked late with her would get all the recognition. They get acknowledged in the staff meetings. They get the awards. They get the bonuses. And the people who came in at 6, 6:30, and 7 and left because of family commitments or avoiding traffic, they would never get acknowledged. And it was a shame. It really brought morale down. And how do you deal with something like that?
It's also part of that generational thing that you see within the workplace. It's like oftentimes it's like, younger generations who come in have this concept around, I'm here for a certain segment of time, and I'm here. I signed on for my 8 hours a day, and okay, I don't need to be here 12 or 13-hour days. The challenge that I've had with that as well is clearly being able to market what I do on behalf of the organization and be able to sell myself whenever there's an opportunity to do that. Because they clearly need to understand that whereby you may feel that I'm leaving early, these are all of the things that I'm doing. The other challenges, and I've had work with political appointees as well, in that many of them feel that you never really have any time that's your own. And you know that when you're getting emails over the weekend. And why are you sitting there even reading your emails? That's when I really had to do a climate check for myself. Should I really be checking email? Should I really have my BlackBerry when I'm on vacation? No. And so you're right, it is a challenge. You just have to come up with unique ways to market yourself and manage them so that they really know what you're doing. There are no more questions. I really appreciate again the opportunity of being invited here today. We have our panel